So this video is from Caroline's sister, Ruth.
Okay.
And I'm Ruth's daughter, Janelle. And on behalf of my family and my brother Brad's family, our hearts are with you today. And we just want to share a couple of memories of Auntie Caroline that are so special to us. The first one is a story my mom used to always tell when she was younger, that when Caroline and my mom, Ruth, were little, Caroline was 4 years older and Ruth was the baby. So Caroline and Ruth would play sometimes. They'd play house. They'd go to the dump and they would get shards and things that they could decorate a little room with. And then they would go to the tall grass and stamp down a room in the grass and decorate it with what they had found at the dump. Well, Caroline, being older, could always decorate her house prettier than my mom could. And so Mom and Caroline would decorate their house and then they'd go visiting to each other's houses. And Mom says that she would go to see Caroline's house and she would go visiting there and she would walk in, and because she was young and she cried quite a bit as a child, according to her, she would look at Caroline, how pretty Caroline had decorated her house, and start to cry and say, "Yours is prettier than mine." And Caroline would say, "Oh, that's okay, I'll trade with you." So then Mom would take that house and Caroline would go back to the other little room that they had stomped down in the grass. And Caroline would fix that one up. Then Mom would go visiting to Caroline's again and cry and cry and say, "I like yours better." And what would Caroline do?
Give it up.
She would trade with you, yes. So that's one very sweet memory that makes me realize from a very, very young age, my Auntie Caroline had a loving heart for younger children, and it showed through her entire life. The second memory we have is the wonderful times that Auntie Caroline spent with my mom when they were older women and they had both lost their husbands. Auntie Caroline would come down to Orange County, California, and spend a few weeks every winter with my mom. And they just had the best time cooking together, taking walks together, just being together. I think that was the best part of these sisters, these Melnichuk sisters. They just enjoyed being together. And I have wonderful memories of Auntie Caroline being at my house for dinner, going to her house. She was just such a welcoming, wise woman. And that's what I will remember most, is her legacy of wisdom, her legacy of family love, and her legacy of having this beautiful hope that things would be better and heaven would happen, and she was ready. I love the legacy my auntie left for me. And Mom and Brad and I all send our love today. Mom, you wanted to say you loved your sister.
Oh, yeah. She was actually because she was 2 years older, I believe.
4.
Than me. But whenever we played or something, I was always, I guess, sort of a one that wanted to have the nice time, and it just, I'd cry and Caroline would give it to me. So
yeah,
I would say I crying for a brat or whatever.
No. You just had a loving older sister. Our love to all of you. We will miss her.
Hi, my name is Janice Bell, and I'm a niece of Auntie Caroline's. Our collective family is grieving the loss of my precious auntie today, who was a mother and an auntie and a friend. And we're all grieving the loss of our usual family rituals and routines around mourning that have been interrupted and even canceled to a certain extent during this COVID-19 pandemic. I today am mourning, and this week I've been mourning a significant loss of my precious Auntie Caroline, who was not only my aunt, but my mentor and my friend. Auntie Caroline and I lived in the same city of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, for 34 years from 1974 to 2008. And she was my nearest Melnichuk family relative, and we were involved weekly in the same church community called Mountain View. We enjoyed visiting each other's homes, and she and Uncle Adolf were very interested and involved and supportive of my growing family. In fact, when my eldest son was born in April of 1985, a vicious winter storm had blown into Calgary that weekend, and it prevented my parents from traveling to welcome this new baby boy. But who came to visit the very next morning at the Foothills Hospital? Auntie Caroline and Uncle Adolph arrived bearing food and presents. And perhaps what solidified my growing friendship and connection with Auntie Caroline was the unexpected and very sudden death of her precious husband, Adolph, in April of 1999. And just a few months later, the death of my mother in October. And as Auntie Caroline and I both grieved these very, very significant losses, she became increasingly important to me, not only through her wisdom and love and hospitality, but also in her role as an advocate and a cheerleader. I really enjoyed our visits together, and I often sought her guidance and counsel. And over the years, as she became that surrogate mother to me, I learned to trust her wisdom and advice, particularly in times of hardship and personal loss and disappointment. Auntie Caroline had this special annual Ukrainian Christmas dinner that she hosted in her home for our extended family, and then later in our friendship circle in the Mountain View church community. Auntie Caroline could be counted on at these celebrations to wear her colorful Ukrainian shawl and recite the Lord's Prayer in Ukrainian before the food was served. And we continued that tradition whenever possible. And most recently, in January of 2020, I flew into Calgary and created and celebrated a Ukrainian Christmas at her table with her. And who knew that this would be our last Ukrainian Christmas celebration together before COVID struck. Over the years, I've had an opportunity to learn from my Auntie Caroline, and as she dealt with numerous health concerns and hospitalizations and surgeries, I became fascinated at her amazing optimism in the face of all this adversity. And so I got curious and started to ask questions of her, like, how do you manage to stay so positive? And she told me that as she lay in her hospital bed or was recovering at home, she would deliberately begin to think about particular memories that were important to her. She would read, she would pray, she would sing. And one of the things that really struck me was the ways in which she had this reminiscing happening about all the highlights and some lowlights of her own life. For example, being a mother of four young children, and her husband unexpectedly falling off a ladder and was told that he probably would not walk. And what did she do? She decided that they would move from Edmonton to Calgary and relocate their family and buy a daycare for young children. And she and Uncle Adolph operated for many years. And she would also go through a list of significant people in her life in that very same way and remember stories and experiences with them. You know, we often think that resilience just means that we'll be unaffected by hard things. But that's not really how it works. Resilience is that amazing ability to withstand hard things, to suffer and experience damage, but to still manage to come through on the other side intact. And I believe that Auntie's acceptance of what was her mantra. And it's really become valuable wisdom to me and has had a major impact in my own life. I too have come to believe that when we fight against what is, we suffer more. And that acceptance of what is beside us in daily living, it allows us to move into a stance that invites health and healing. I want to express my deep appreciation and gratitude to Auntie Caroline's children. Milton and Sandy were Auntie Caroline's local family team that played an incredibly important role in overseeing her care and allowing her to be able to celebrate her 96th birthday in her own home. And Eldine and Twyla, who lived in the U.S., found creative ways to connect with Auntie Caroline through daily phone calls and FaceTime, and were very involved in the life of their mother from a distance. The deep devotion shown to Auntie Caroline by her children has been exceptional, and I believe it really extended the quality of her life. And so thank you, Eldine and Sandy and Milton and Twyla, for your outstanding care and devotion to your mother and to my auntie. May Auntie Caroline rest in peace.
I'm Aldine Margenovich, the eldest daughter of Caroline. My mom's life was a wonderful example. She took everything that came her way with grace and acceptance, the type of grace and acceptance that only comes from a strong faith in God. One of her often used expressions was, "This too shall pass." Mom always possessed a can-do spirit. That can-do spirit and the willingness to persevere has been evident in many ways throughout her life. In her early years, she wanted to sew. She saved and bought herself a sewing machine and taught herself how to sew. When she was showing my dad her first attempt at a dress for me, he laughingly said, "We may be poor, but we're not deformed." Her sewing skills improved, and she made most of my sister Sandy and my clothes and taught us both to sew. When Mom and Dad were first married, she had a healthy respect, bordering on fear of the water. She could only dog paddle. Dad loved water, and she loved our dad. So she took swimming lessons and learned how to have fun in the water. Almost all our vacations were spent on or around the water. Mom wanted to learn to drive. My dad, like most men of that era, thought a woman did not need to know how to drive. So she observed, asked a lot of questions, and when Dad took the truck to work and I was off to school, she bundled my sister Sandy in the car and, taking back roads around the neighborhood, taught herself how to drive. I might add at this point that this was well before automatic transmissions. She was very proud when she passed the driving exam on her first attempt. When I was 13, my dad crushed his ankle, and the doctor told Mom, "I'm sorry, I did the best I could, but I don't think your husband will ever walk again." She didn't tell Dad, but with 4 young children to raise, the youngest still a baby, a disabled husband, no medical insurance, a partially finished house, and virtually no savings, everything looked very bleak. She did what she always did. She took it to the Lord in prayer. There were many small answers to prayer that summer, but the life-changing miracle was that with the help of her brother, she and Dad bought a daycare, and we moved to Calgary. Dad's ankle healed, and amazingly, he walked without even a limp. At the age of 87, she decided the world was going computerized, and she did not want to be left behind. She tried several computers and found that the iPad was a relatively easy tool for her to manage. She was a people person. Mom always was interested in people and drew people to her. She was accepting of different opinions and lifestyles. She may not approve, but did not condemn, just kept on loving unconditionally. She made a conscious effort not to interfere in the lives of her children, Often she would say, I don't need to know about everything going on in your life. In fact, I don't want to know. But when asked, she could always be counted on to give a good opinion. When I turned 65, I decided instead of being in the funk over getting old, I would plan something really different for my 65th birthday. I decided to get my ears pierced. When I told my mom my plans, her reaction was, stupid, stupid, stupid. Whatever would make you want to do something that stupid? I explained that at 65, something stupid was exactly what I needed. After her initial reaction, she thought about it a bit and said, oh, well, you have to do what you have to do. I know she was an exceptional woman. It's hard to think of her that way. She was just my mom.
Hi, I'm Twyla, Caroline's youngest. When I was over a year old, my family moved to Calgary. They took over the daycare center, and one of the first examples of my parents' leadership and partnership was when she and Dad set the rules for Mom to run the daycare center, the day-to-day operations, while Dad did the logistics. He did maintenance, transportation of children to and from school in the morning and the evenings, and bookkeeping, as well as he was constructing a home for us to live on. And he also was there to take care of us when we got home from school ourselves. Mom was always at the daycare center when the children were dropped off, and she greeted the parents in the mornings and the evenings. But if the parents were in need, she either helped them through a little extension on payment or nourishing garden-grown foods to provide nourishment to their families. Mom was a strong businesswoman long before the women's movement, and it was incredible to be raised by parents who were so ahead of their time. I grew up not really understanding all the sacrifices and the unique situation of having such a modern family, especially since they made it look so easy. After I got married, my husband and I settled to where our jobs took us. Our visits with Mom and Dad, and later just Mom, included vacations and explorations or fun trips. In California, we went to the Mojave Desert, Death Valley, we explored Palm Springs and Vegas. And of course, none of those would have been complete without seeing those California family. We moved to Maryland on the East Coast, and we took Mom and Dad to Williamsburg, Virginia, where they have reenactments of a town from 1600s. And another year, we took Mom and Dad to the caverns in Shenandoah, where we stayed in a refurbished barn on the Shenandoah River. After Dad passed on, Mom continued to visit, and we continued to explore the area. Mom and I took a 2-day trip to the American History Smithsonian, where they have the amazing gowns of the First Lady. It was really fascinating. And the next day, then we drove to the SDA General Conference in Silver Springs, Maryland. Mom enjoyed seeing how they protected the works of E.G. White's in the tempered storage. Another visit with my family and Mom, we went to the White House at Christmas. It is absolutely beautiful, even more beautiful than they show on TV. And because Mom was in a wheelchair, we were taken by elevator down to the working areas of the White House, where they were doing lots of potatoes and they were preparing elaborate meals. Then for graduation, my husband surprised me with a trip to my university in Florida to March. Mom flew there too. It was a real surprise. We had a fun week, which included Mom at 80 years riding a water roller coaster. She had a blast. She screeched with delight as the log ride slid down on a waterfall. And then we also got her on an inner tube and she floated down a lazy river. The next year, her graduation gift to me was a cruise to the Western Caribbean. What great memories. For her 88th birthday, the majority of the family went to Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic. We stayed in an all-inclusive resort where our only decision was whether we were going to sit by the water and the ocean or whether we were going to sit by the pool. That was a great, fun trip. The legacy that Mom has shared is that you work hard and you play hard. She set an amazing example of humor and enjoyment of life, living life to its fullest. Thank you, Mom. You've done a great job, and you are missed.